Lyminster has a dragon legend of which many different versions exist. There are hundreds of different dragons of the world, but Sussex is home to a species of dragon known as the Knucker Dragon. Kncker is a dialect word for a sort of water dragon. The word comes from the Old English nicor, which means water monster. The Knucker inhabited a supposedly bottomless pool known as the Knucker Hole, and this is situated just to the north of Lyminster. Some believe a knight took up the challenge to slew the beast. Others say it was a local lad named Jim Puttock who outwitted the dragon. The story of Jim Puttock's method of defeat over the serpent varies slightly, but most agree that the outcome was the same. I'll be telling you the most common version.
Hello sports fans. So this is Lyminster Church. This is the home of the memorial to the Knucker Dragon.
This is the story of the Lyminster Knucker Dragon. Not many people know, but Sussex is home to a race of aquatic dragons known as the Knucker Dragon. They reside in large pools that descend deep into the earth. There are believed to be a number of these holes around Sussex. They can be found close by in Lancing, Shoreham, Worthing, Binstead and Lyminster. The Lyminster Dragon was a particularly vicious beast and would rain havoc among the locals. It is said that the dragon would ascend from its gloomy deep and consume any wildlife and farm animals it could devour before returning to the deep. When it had consumed all of the local livestock, it moved on to the villagers themselves, paying close attention to the children for a nice, easy and delicious meal. The mayor of Arundel announced a huge reward for the one that could slay the monster. Some say he even gave his beautiful daughter's hand in marriage and a promise of land and wealth if they should succeed. Many knights came with their glistening armour to boast of their strength and courage, but all would succumb to the same grisly fate. The knights would gallop towards the Knucker Hole, swords drawn, but it would not be long before the beast would emerge from the depths and bite down onto their victims, usually swallowing them whole, then slithering and sliding slowly back into its hole, later to return only to regurgitate the poor knight's weapons and armour onto the bank. Jim Puttock, a poverty-stricken farmer's boy whose father faced ruin after his livestock had been eaten by the dragon, thought he may have an answer to the problem. He knew that the beast was too fast and too strong to fight. He would have to outsmart it, and he would need to enlist the help of the local villagers. Jim asked the woodsman, blacksmith, miller, baker and orchardist to meet him in the village square at dusk. He gave them a list of items between them to bring. That evening, the intrigued villagers arrived at the village square. They all gathered, and Jim explained his unusual request. The somewhat bewildered villagers agreed and swiftly got to work. The woodsman built a large fire in the square, to which the blacksmith placed a huge iron pot. The miller and baker worked on making the tastiest, crunchiest pastry, while the orchardist chopped up the sweetest, most crisp apples. The villagers had prepared a ginormous but delicious apple pie, and were about to put the lid on when Jim stopped them. He had some final ingredients to add. That day, Jim had been busy in the local woodland, foraging for plants and fungi. He had collected a large sack of deadly nightshade, foxglove and hemlock plants, as well as devil's bolete, destroying angels and deathcap mushrooms. These are some of the most poisonous things that can be found growing in the UK, and Jim emptied the entire contents into the pie, mixed it in and put the lid on to bake. Later on that night, they loaded it onto a horse and cart. It was so large and heavy, it took a group of villagers just to lift it onto the cart. Jim and the villagers led the horse down towards the Knucker's Hole. One by one, the villagers peeled off and hid behind stone walls, trees and in bushes. No one brave enough to get too close, but not Jim. He swallowed a large, dry lump in his throat and led the horse and cart ever closer to the water's edge, then sheltered in the shadows behind a nearby oak tree. and waited. The moonlight shone down on the still water of the Knocker's Hole, and for a brief period there was calm. But it wasn't very long before the towering silhouette of a dragon burst from the water's depths and rained down onto the pyre, devouring it, along with the horse and cart, then slid gingerly back into the deep. Jim anxiously waited for what seemed like an eternity, asking himself whether his plan had actually worked. It wouldn't be too long until his questions were answered, as the beast crashed out of the water and onto the bank. But something was different. The beast was unsteady, coughing and splattering. It then regurgitated the half-digested remains of the horse and cart, as well as a thick, black, oozing vomit. The Knucker continued to cough, vomit and stumble around, clearly distressed. Jim knew that this was his only chance. He sprung from the relative safety of the tree and charged behind the dragon, picking up a discarded sword off the ground on his way. He mustered up all of his strength and raised the sword high above his head, then plunging it down onto the creature's neck, he continued to hack at it until the head was completely removed from the body. The villagers rejoiced, scooping Jim up onto their shoulders. He had done it. He was a hero. They paraded him down to the local six-bell pub. The landlord had just heard of his victory and had a cool ale waiting on the bar for Jim's arrival. Without hesitation, Jim picked up his drink, and with not a moment to spare, he raised his glass and gulped it down in one. He then wiped his mouth with his hand. Amongst all the excitement, Jim had forgotten one crucial thing. He hadn't washed his hands. No one is sure if Jim Puttock had the poisonous blood of the serpent or the concoction of poisonous plants he had collected that day on his hands. But needless to say, he didn't make it to see the sunrise.
Right, so this is the stained glass that was made of the Knucker Dragon. So this is the pie that he baked, which he succeeded in killing the Knucker Dragon with. This is what's believed to be the farmer's son's tomb, or some other stories say that this was the knight's tomb, or whoever defeated the dragon, this was the stone that was laid on their grave.
The Slayer's Slab is a title given to this medieval gravestone formerly located in the graveyard of the church. It has now since been moved inside to protect it from weathering. According to legend, it is the gravestone of the dragon slayer who killed the Knucker, which lived in the nearby Knucker Hole. The stone has a cross on it, overlaying a herringbone pattern, but no inscription to identify the tomb's occupant.
Right, so this is apparently as close as you can get nowadays without permission to the Knocker's Hole. It's just on the other side of this gate, so I'd love to get in there and have a little look. Apparently it goes to the centre of the earth, really deep, and they collected some church ropes and the church bells and chucked them into the hole to see how deep it would go, and they ended up losing the rope and bell because it was so deep.
Thanks for watching, sports fans. Hope you enjoyed this. It's a little bit different to my normal videos, so please let me know in the comments if you like this kind of thing. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe.